Victory up and over the hill lanes, take it up with a collision. That slow drive as far back as Rosecrans. South LA on the 105 West. West 105 just before Vermont, a wreck in the center divider. Busy here from Paramount. And North Hollywood, the NoHo area, the 170 south at Riverside Drive. Stalled vehicle clear to the right shoulder.
Summer days getting shorter and business to-do lists getting longer? You need Indeed. Their all-in-one hiring solution makes it easy to attract, interview, and hire candidates all in one place. Sponsor your first job and get hiring today by visiting Indeed.com/credit.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
I'm a bad man.
A surprising first week of the season for both of LA's NFL teams. The Chargers losing home to Miami. The Rams went up to Seattle and put up 30 points on their scoreboard. They also shut out Seattle in the second half to win by 17. The Chargers lose to Miami by 2. They gave up 36 points and 538 yards in total offense. Going to be a long week for the Chargers defense. USC moved up to 5th in this week's AP Top 25 college football rankings. Colorado moved up 4 spots to number 18. The top 4, Georgia, Michigan, Florida State, and Texas. The Dodgers, 32 games over 500, reduced their magic number to 6 to win the NL West title. The Dodgers are back home tonight to start a 3-game series against San Diego. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson. More news, opinions, and conversation when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
KBLA Talk 1580 is dedicated to empowering our communities by providing progressive talk radio for our audience. We strive to be an intersectional voice for the voiceless. As a Black-owned and operated station, we are committed to highlighting diverse perspectives and creating safe spaces for meaningful dialogue. We believe that everyone has something unique to bring to these political, economic, social, and cultural conversations, and we don't shy away from the hard conversations about current events. We endeavor to be a beacon of hope and understanding, while boldly challenging listeners to think more deeply about difficult topics that impact us all. With this in mind, our mission statement at KBLA Talk 1580 is simple: to create an inclusive platform that promotes civil discourse through honest dialogue and encourages personal growth among our listeners, so they can become the active agents of change. Our vision is to establish ourselves as the premier radio network with relevant programming across the beloved community, connecting people through shared experiences and collective power for lasting impact beyond these challenging times.
Say it loud. I'm black and I'm proud. And I'm Tavis Smiley. I'm delighted to have you tuned in to our program today. In case you just tuned in and missed a spirited dialogue in hour 1 about all things political, you did not hear me say that we were pleased to welcome some new stations who are carrying affiliates across the country, carrying the Tavis Smiley Show today or launching later this month. But I'm pleased first to welcome WURD Radio, 900 AM, 96.1 FM in Philadelphia right now. Philly, I love you. Ain't nothing y'all can do about it. The city of brotherly love, and as we often say, sisterly affection. So delighted and humbled to be heard right now in the city of Philadelphia. WVON, 1690 AM in Chicago, comes online October 2nd, to be exact. And so I'm pleased to know that in just a few days we'll be heard both in the city of brotherly love and in the Windy City. So we welcome WVON 1690 AM to our fold. And in Mississippi, we believe radio it's a network of radio stations. So there are a number of stations in their network. And so we welcome a bunch of people in Mississippi as well. And there are other cities, and I don't have time to run through all of them. I just wanted to mention just a few of those who are on the list now of stations and affiliates who get to hear, their audiences get to hear this program every day. And I could not be more humbled by the expansion, the rapid expansion of our show. Just over a month now in syndication. And the addition of Philadelphia and Chicago means that we are now heard in just about 4 or 5 weeks of being in syndication now heard in 3 of the top 5 markets. This ain't my first rodeo. I've been in this for a long time. And getting to 3 of the top 5 in a matter of weeks is a big deal around here. And so while we are reflective today on this 9/11 anniversary, we're also celebratory today of the expansion of this particular radio program. So welcome to Philly and Chicago and stations in Mississippi and beyond who are now carrying the Tavis Smiley Show. You honor us by your carriage and by your coverage. Thank you, thank you, thank you. In this hour, Dr. Lewis Gordon is our guest, and we're going to talk about the relevance of philosophical insights to contemporary challenges, outlined in his latest text, Black Existentialism and Decolonizing Knowledge, the writings of Lewis R. Gordon. So we're about to submerge here and about to go deep. So brace yourself and put on all the equipment you need to submerge with us. It's going to be a great hour, but it's going to be a deep hour. The question essentially is, can philosophical insights genuinely contribute to understanding today's pressing challenges, or are they simply an unproductive distraction by these brilliant academics from the immediate hardships that everyday people like you and me face? We will talk in this hour, I think, and hope, about why philosophical introspection on various topics in real time matter and resonate in this present moment. I'm pleased to welcome Dr. Lewis Gordon back to this program. Dr. Gordon, how are you today, sir?
I'm fine, Tavis. And right away, I got to say, Dua Neter, which is congratulations from the ancient East African language of Medu Neter. Mazel tov, congratulations on the expansion of the program.
We received that. I thank you for that. And only you can do it in a variety of languages. So I thank you. in every language, I simply say thank you. In my basic English, I just say thank you for those kind words. And it's good to know that you have been a regular contributor to this program. So I just am not excited about the fact
My honor and privilege.
No, thank you.
My honor and privilege.
I appreciate that. No, I'm grateful for those who've contributed to this program as we've worked our way into syndication. I'm just always thrilled knowing that a larger audience will hear not just my voice. That's not the point. I hear the voices of those who have information to share that empowers us. And so I'm delighted that other persons now in this country are hearing, even as we speak, the voice of Dr. Lewis Gordon. And that's a good thing all the way around. Let me start with a broad question about philosophy, and we'll work through this hour and again, submerge and hopefully get some good stuff out of this hour. So you are a philosopher. I know many. My friend Cornel West, of course, has never actually, it's just funny, Dr. West, now running for president on the Green Party label, has never taught philosophy, but he majored in philosophy. He just never taught it. And he and I have had many good labs.
He has a PhD.
Yeah, he has PhD
he has a PhD in philosophy.
Exactly.
Yeah, he does.
I tease him all the time. He studied all those years to get a PhD in philosophy from Princeton, no less. And in 40 years of teaching, he literally has never taught it. Now, when you hear him speak, he weaves philosophy into everything he says, of course, but he's never actually taught it, and we get a good laugh about that whenever I raise that subject. But you, of course, do teach this. And let me just ask broadly, and then we'll jump from here. The role that philosophy can play in our politics today.
Okay, well, one of the things I got to say right straight off, sorry if you hear some sounds in the background. I'm on a shuttle bus on the way to the airport. But the first thing I want to say is my situation is rather ironic, which is I wasn't actually interested in teaching in philosophy departments, even though I have a PhD in philosophy. But after 10 years of a lot of my writings, and a lot of them were listed in philosophy, I became so known in the area that I've taught in philosophy departments and many others. So the way I identify myself is I always say I am also a philosopher because I never take the position that philosophy has any supremacy over many other ways of living and thinking.
Got it.
I think it's part of something greater than itself.
I like that. I like that, and I love the humility that comes along with it. There's a great deal to learn from philosophy, a great deal to take from it. We're going to take a lot from it in this hour, but I love the humility, which does not surprise me given that it came out of the mouth of Lewis Gordon, just the humility about the role that philosophy can play. It is not necessarily greater than any other field of study, but there are a lot of insights that come from studying it, and we're going to get into some of those insights as we move through this hour, talking about the latest book from Dr. Lewis Gordon, Black Existentialism and Decolonizing Knowledge, the writings of Lewis R. Gordon. You're listening to Tavis Smiley.
For all the freedom-loving folk, this is Tavis Smiley.
I feel like freedom. Escalade IQ. This the intro to the all-electric Cadillac, perfected like Zoom. And on a full charge, you get 450 miles without the stop. Haiku. This is what I do. Daddy fat intellect since '92. Linked all the way back, panoramic roof. Come with 24-inch rim standard. Ooh, why? Shawty don't kill him. Cadillac diamond in the back, cold chillin'. And when I'm on attack, on the track is no ceiling. Sky's the limit. You hear me? You hear me? Straight drop, no parachutes. Lay lines like a longitude and latitude. Dilly, beloved, clearly we're hustling. Bustin', truckin'. Cadillac, Cadillac, Cadillac.
For more on the Escalade IQ, visit Cadillac.com. Available late 2024. GM estimate 450-mile range. On a full charge based on development testing and/or analytical projection. Consistent with SCHA 1634 revision 2017 MCT. Range subject to change prior to production. Annual rates may vary based on service factors, including ambience temperature, terrain, battery age, and condition loading, and how you use and maintain your vehicle.
You're listening to K-Drip, where we play all the best classic water-wasting hits like watering your lawn during the hottest time of the day and leaky faucets. They're tunes from another time because now that we face a hotter, drier future, every drop counts. Despite an extremely wet winter, keep using less water, fixing leaks, and reusing indoor water for your garden. Visit SaveOurWater.com for more ways to conserve. Up next, brushing your teeth with the water on. K-Drip.
Dominique DePrima, KBLA Talk 1580. One of the most important details of running a business is managing cash flow. In fact, it's key to maintaining your company's health. Putting cash flow management before profits using dedicated software can help you drill down to the details that let you see the bigger picture. Having that clearer outlook makes for a stronger business. Whatever your business's financial goals, U.S. Bank Access Commitment Initiatives can help support you in reaching them. Access your financial goals at usbank.com/access. Member FDIC, equal housing lender.
Hi, this is LA City Councilman Curran Price, inviting you to the 28th Annual Central Avenue Jazz Festival on September the 23rd from 11 to 7 p.m. For nearly 3 decades, the Central Avenue Jazz Festival has paid homage to the legendary Central Avenue and its influence on jazz history. Jazz, blues, and Latin jazz will be featured on 3 stages of music. Co-headlining are Hubert Laws with special guest Eloise Laws and the Billy Childs Quartet featuring Sean Jones. The day includes plenty of food, merchants, and 4 pavilions focused on youth programming, art, health and wellness, and public resources. Parking is limited, so Metro and rideshare are recommended. Hubert Laws with special guests Eloise Laws and the Billy Childs Quartet featuring Sean Jones. The day includes plenty of food, merchants, and 4 pavilions focused on youth programming, art, health and wellness, and public resources. For more information, visit CentralAveJazzFest.com. CentralAveJazzFest.com. See you on the 23rd.
He's rooting for everybody black. Everybody black. More of Tavis Smiley coming your way right now.
So, Dr. Lewis Gordon, let's get this party started. When we tend to think of philosophy, certainly when I think of philosophy, I wrestled with it over the years and, of course, learned a great deal from it and still do. But we think of philosophy, I think, oftentimes as something that's so esoteric that it's hard to find the practicality in it. Does that make sense?
That's the way it's been sold to a lot of people, that it's done a lot of damage.
Mm-hmm.
And what you said totally makes sense, but that's been a consequence of the colonial attitude towards philosophy that unfortunately has been devised to dupe us.
Mm-hmm.
So let me get straight into to how I talk about philosophy.
Sure.
The first thing is academic philosophy isn't philosophy. Academic philosophy is what academics talk among one another. Okay? Most philosophy is done by everyday people all over the world, and it's been done since our species has been around. And the published stuff in philosophy, if you were to put all of the published work, all the writings ever done on philosophical ideas, they don't even comprise 1% of what humanity has produced philosophically.
Mm-hmm.
So the first thing is we have to understand that there's a distinction between academic philosophy and philosophy. So let me just talk about philosophy. Philosophy, in a nutshell, is the human being's struggle to understand our relationship with reality, right?
Mm-hmm.
And also to deal with the many unfortunate ways we try to avoid it. And the unfortunate ways often take the form of lies. And so a lot of what we try to do when we're thinking philosophically is to liberate ourselves of the lies we tell ourselves. And among those lies are lies about philosophy. For instance, here's a big lie that everybody all over the place has forced on them, which is that philosophy began by some miracle 2,500 years ago in ancient Greece. And that's complete BS. When I teach classes, I begin with writings from 4,000 years ago from East African people, thinking about questions like, why am I here? You know, I mean, what are we doing? What are we responsible for? And these are things that really matter. In fact, young children think about this, adolescents think about this, and we know as we go through life, there are times we get up and we ask ourselves, is all this worth it? And that we could call our philosophical moments. And so philosophy, and historically, philosophy has always dealt with pressing problems of the time because problems are part of reality. And so if you are developing a relationship with reality, then whatever those problems are, you need to address them.
You said a few things there that I want to give you a chance to unpack. So let me start my interrogation. One, I am always amazed, as I say oftentimes on this program, at the ways in which the dots connect from 1 hour to the next. And oftentimes, most of the times, the person in hours 1, 2, and 3 aren't necessarily listening to each other. And yet the dots always seem to connect. So we were literally talking in our first hour today with David Corn. We were talking politics and really talking about the ways in which lying has become normalized in our politics. We were talking about the fact that today is the 22nd anniversary of the 9/11 attacks in 3 different places, of course, at the Pentagon, in that field in Pennsylvania, and, of course, there in New York City. So 22 years ago today, this happened. This terror was visited upon our nation. And George W. Bush stood up thereafter and lied repeatedly and then got us in a war in Iraq. We all know how that ended up. Don't want to repeat the first hour, but we're talking about the ways in which George W. Bush starts to normalize lying in the White House. Fast forward a few years, Donald Trump shows up, and the Washington Post has done a piece detailing that there were at least 30,000 things, 30,000 lies that Donald Trump told during his 4-year tenure. That's a lot of lies in 30 years coming out the president of the United States' mouth. At least 30,000. Here you come now in this hour talking about lying and how we too often lie to ourselves. Let me come out of the political realm into the personal realm. Why is it that we so often find ourselves lying to ourselves? If you can't be honest with nobody, it ought to be yourself. But why do we so often lie to ourselves?
Oh, there's so many reasons for this. The example you gave of Donald Trump, I mean, I don't think that man is even capable of truth.
Yeah.
So that's a whole other thing. But most lying comes out of that initial point I made, which is that reality is ultimately very scary. And, when we really, really think about it, reality was around long before we even popped up, even before our planet popped up. And reality will be around long after we're gone. In other words, we have this, unfortunately, how can I call it? It's not really, it's an obsession. We're trying to take ourselves too seriously, to act like ultimately all reality depends on us. And that's absolute nonsense.
Right.
I don't know what's bringing in some of the feedback, but don't worry. So the first thing is there's this thing called the ego, and one of the biggest problems we've had, and this is something that's celebrated in what's called Western thought, which is a very problematic notion, which is this constant celebration of the ego. But the problem is if you pump up your ego enough, you begin to lie to yourself that you're God. You think you control everything. But part of being a human being is to understand your fragility, that you don't control everything. And that ultimately, if you let go of the ego, you have room for others. And when you have room for others, you also have room for things like evidence. So, for instance, one of the biggest lies we tell ourselves is everything's opinion. And that's complete BS. Because ultimately, if it really is about opinion, then you can ignore reality. But the fact of the matter is, evidence knocks on the door. If there's a bus coming at you, it's a good idea to step out the way.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the things we have to deal with is the problem of filling ourselves up with our egos.
Yeah.
If we let go of that, there's room for others.
But
second thing.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No. Please. You're on a roll. The second thing is, go ahead. I'll hold my question. Second thing is what?
Oh, the second thing is, when we don't take ourselves too seriously, we have room to become not only more ethical, but also more courageous.
Mm-hmm.
You see, ultimately most lying depends on cowardice. There are some lies that are come out of compassion. For instance, if you know a person is about to die of a deadly illness, why make their last moments horrible?
Mm-hmm.
So you don't talk about the illness, but it is a form of lie, but it's not the same thing. But the egological lies, the effort to protect oneself in a wall of falsehoods, those are the ones that jeopardize us.
Yeah.
And connected to that, one last point, you brought up philosophy. I argue in my writings that philosophy is fundamentally public. And in other words, when something is public, it means you're accountable to others than yourself.
Yeah.
And that accountability always brings with it the question of truth.
Yeah. You said a mouthful there, and again, I'm going to try to unpack as much of this as I can. Let me start with this. It occurred to me as you were talking about ego, and I literally sat here still for a second and I was listening to you and thinking at the same time. I don't know that in my lifetime, and I've got a birthday this week, and I don't know that in my lifetime that I've ever. No, thank you. I was just,
happy birthday, yeah.
No, I appreciate that. I was just making the point that in my lifetime, I don't know that I've ever heard anybody make reference to ego as a positive. I've only heard ego discussed, and I've only discussed it in the context of negativity. He has an ego. She got an ego. And it leads me to ask a question I've never asked in my entire life or in my career, what the purpose of ego is and whether or not ego necessarily has to be a bad thing. Why do we always talk about ego in the negative? Does that make sense?
Oh, it makes a lot of sense. But, part of that, Tavis, is you're black.
Yeah. Ooh, wow. Didn't see that coming. That's deep.
Yeah, no. It's really crucial.
Yeah.
Because, the constant celebration and stroking of the ego is actually not historically how humanity was.
Mm-hmm.
That is something that is intimately connected to the rise of white supremacy. And here's white supremacy in a nutshell. I usually put it this way. Imagine if you have a child and you tell the child that the child is the most important being that has ever existed, that everything that child wants, that child is to get, that at any moment that child doesn't receive it, it's an injustice on the world,
mm-hmm.
and that everything, every desire, everything must, and that child is superior to everybody else. You're going to raise a schmuck.
Mm-hmm.
And I just described the past several hundred years of white domination.
Wow.
In fact, I just described Donald Trump, and one of the reasons he taps into white supremacy is because at its core, that's what it's about. It's the belief that there are people who are born intrinsically superior to others. And part of whiteness is to fill yourself up with your ego. Now, part of blackness, and there weren't historically always black people, but part of blackness is to constantly have your ego broken down. And so one of the things that black people, brown people, many people around the world, and also many people in places we call white, but are subordinated there. Well, I was talking earlier with a gentleman about Ireland as an example, but there are many other examples. We're talking about Ukraine today,
mm-hmm.
and it's a more complex story. But there are people who get their egos broken down, and what they learn is life goes on without having a big ego. And so there's a way in which, because people who understand that we depend on one another know that the ego get in the way. But if you think about the view that if you are white, you don't need anybody else,
mm-hmm.
and that's absolute falsehood.
I was afraid this might happen when we heard that he was on making his way to the airport, and how that happened, I don't even know. But we're going to get this issue fixed in just a second here and continue with Dr. Lewis Gordon. The conversation is just getting rich, and it's always at that point when it's getting deeper and richer, that you end up losing a phone line. This is, of course, live radio, and this is what happens in live radio. And so I think we've got him back. Dr. Gordon, you still with us?
Yes, I'm with you. Did part of what I say we lost it?
Yes, we did.
Okay, so if I summarize what I said was, I said that part of the way you talk about ego comes from an upbringing in which people admit they need one another.
Sure.
But there's a lie told to some people that they don't need anybody.
Mm-hmm.
But the only being, if there were one like that doesn't need anybody, is God.
Yes.
And people aren't God.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the first thing. But in terms of the history of ideas, this nonsense goes all the way back to ancient Greece and Rome, which is this idea that there could be a thing that onto itself that's reality and doesn't need anybody else.
Yeah.
But that's just not human being. That's not the way we are. So part of the thing of being from a community of people who are constantly facing being beat down is that you learn you got to put your ego to the side and work with people to build up a decent society, a better reality, a better world.
Yeah. There are two things you said earlier that I want to jump to now, and I'm looking at my clock here. We got about 2 minutes before I have to step aside, and we'll continue when we come forward. But let me just start with this, though. This notion that you raised earlier, that as human beings, so many of us wrestle with this question of why am I here? I want to spend some time on that in our conversation. Let me start, though, broadly with this question. What is it about the human condition that leads us down this pathway of trying to wrestle with this question of why I am here? Does that make sense?
Totally. In fact, you went right at the heart of my recent book, which is Black Existentialism and Decolonizing Knowledge. Mm-hmm. And that's the existentialism part. And the short answer is we exist. Mm. You see, when you exist, the word existence is from the words ex means out and gestere, stand. To exist is to stand out. Mm-hmm. Now there is, if we think about just things being, there's no reason to stand out. They're just there.
Right.
But a human being is properly not a being. We technically stand out. We're like, who the hell are you? What are you? What the hell am I? Mm-hmm. And in fact, the Zulu people, when they pass a person, the way they greet one another is sabona. And translated, it means, I see you. Mm-hmm. In other words, you stand out. So part of being a human being is to deal with when you stand out. And in fact, all over the world, many myths deal with this. Even the Adam and Eve story is about standing out. Mm. Because the moment they face the question of eating from that fruit, they face the possibility of standing out and defying God. So part of what being a human being is to say, oh my goodness, I'm responsible for my existence. I stand out. What am I going to do with it? Mm. What am I going to do?
It's getting rich. It's getting rich. When we come forward, Dr. Lewis Gordon, we're going to talk more about why am I here? Have you ever asked yourself that question? Why am I here? Have you ever asked yourself, is this all worth it? Is it all worth it? I suspect these are questions that people have running through their head when they are wrestling with whether or not they want to take their own lives. Why am I here? Is it all worth it? And there are other questions like how we can live lives that are more ethical, how we can be more courageous. A lot in this book, Black Existentialism and Decolonizing Knowledge, the writings of Lewis R. Gordon. You're listening to Lewis R. Gordon right now on Tavis Smiley.
From Leimert Park with love, this is Tavis Smiley.
If you're like me, 60 and retired, making ends meet, especially here at the supermarket and drugstore, is tough. I'm so blessed to have found benefitscheckup.org. It's a free and confidential website from the National Council on Aging that connected me to $1,200 a year in programs that help pay for food, medicine, utilities, and more. Maybe it can help you. benefitscheckup.org.
My daughter was diagnosed with a rare malignant rhabdoid tumor on the spine. They sent her straight to St. Jude. My hope was gone. But when you get there, everyone's like, hey, we're not going to give up. And when you see other people not giving up on your child, that makes all the difference in the world. When I found out I didn't have to pay, I was just grateful They saved my baby's life.
Finding cures, saving children. Learn more at stjude.org.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us on this Monday. I'm Mike Moore. Now here's the latest from the Black Information Network. Family members of loved ones of the thousands killed on 9/11 are gathering this morning at the World Trade Center Memorial in Manhattan. During the ceremony, now in its 22nd year, names of the nearly 3,000 victims are being read aloud along with tolling of the bells and moments of silence. Vice President Kamala Harris is in attendance. The National Weather Service is advising beachgoers along the North Carolina coastline to be aware of strong ocean swells this week, with Hurricane Lee now being a Category 3 storm. Although the storm is some 400 miles away, the 120-mile-per-hour winds are expected to result in dangerous rip currents and beach erosion. And that's the latest. I'm Mike Moore from your 24/7 news source, the Black Information Network, and BINnews.com.
In Monrovia, you've got an accident working on that 210 westbound drive right at Myrtle Avenue. Everything's moved off to the right shoulder. Sepulveda Pass, still pretty busy with a wreck on the 405 South at Getty Center Drive. That is taking out your carpool lane, and traffic's jammed from Burbank Boulevard. In South LA, still slowing on that 110 northbound drive, Century Boulevard to the 10.
Summer days getting shorter and business to-do lists getting longer? You need Indeed. Their all-in-one hiring solution makes it easy to attract, interview, and hire candidates all in one place. Sponsor your first job and get hiring today by visiting Indeed.com/credit.
Hi, I'm Kyle at Blindster.com, and I sell custom blinds designed for do-it-yourselfers. Unlike stock blinds offered at big box retailers, Blindster blinds are custom made for your windows and shipping is free. And right now, save 50% off any order during our Labor Day sale. Blindster.com.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
I'm a bad man. A surprising first week of the season for both of LA's NFL teams. The Chargers lose at home to Miami. The Rams went up to Seattle and put up 30 points on their scoreboard. They also shut out Seattle in the second half to win by 17. The Chargers lose to Miami by 2. They gave up 36 points and 538 yards in total offense. Going to be a long week for the Chargers defense. USC moved up to 5th in this week's AP Top 25 college football rankings. Colorado moved up 4 spots to number 18. The top 4, Georgia, Michigan, Florida State, and Texas. The Dodgers, 32 games over 500, reduced their magic number to 6 to win the NL West title. The Dodgers are back home tonight to start a 3-game series against San Diego. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson. More news, opinions, and conversation when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
This is KBLA Talk 1580. Talk radio. That's music to your ears. We're unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580.
Be ready for extreme heat in your area. On days when extreme heat is expected, take action to keep your home as cool as possible. Set your air conditioner to 78 degrees. If AC isn't available, close blinds and curtains on all windows and run fans counterclockwise. Or find your nearest cooling center. Transportation help may be available. Learn more at heatreadyca.com. Brought to you by the state of California.
The Black Hollywood Education and Resource Center proudly presents its 25th annual Real Black Men Short Film Showcase, September 22nd through September 24th. Join us for the opening night celebration on Friday, September 22nd, and enjoy the short film showcase featuring 47 films by emerging black male directors from across the country. Continuing on Saturday, September 23rd and Sunday, September 24th. All events will be held at the Regal LA Live Cinemas, 1000 West Olympic Boulevard in downtown Los Angeles. Lewis. For more information and tickets, visit bherc.org. That's bherc.org or call 323-957-4656. That's 323-957-4656. Don't miss your chance to celebrate excellence in black cinema all weekend long at the Real Black Men Short Film Showcase. See you there.
More honesty than you can handle. More empowerment than you can imagine. You're tuned in to Tavis Smiley.
Tavis Smiley and Dr. Lewis Gordon, and when I tell you he's hit a nerve, our socials are lighting up. My phone is lighting up. Dr. Gordon, you have hit a nerve in this conversation, and we're going to come right back to it in a second here after I remind the audience and tell those who may have just tuned in that our guest is Dr. Lewis Gordon. His new book is called Black Existentialism and Decolonizing Knowledge, the writings of Lewis R. Gordon. I know a lot of folk I'm reading right now are headed to get that book even as we speak. We were talking before that break about these fundamental questions that we ask of ourselves. And of course, Dr. Gordon is a philosopher, and so who better to talk to than him about these kinds of subject matter. But we were wrestling with this question of why am I here? I started by asking, what is it about the human condition that forces us routinely to wrestle with that question, why am I here? And is it worth it? Is it worth it? And I said moments ago, I suspect that those who are wrestling with suicide and those who take their lives, and I've interviewed a number of people in the course of my career who've attempted suicide, and these questions run through their head at that moment. And I suspect whether or how one answers that question determines whether or not you take your own life. But these questions of why am I here and is it all worth it come from what they come from what place in us, Dr. Gordon?
Well, before I answer, there's something I need to say.
Sure.
Which is first I need to send my condolences to all the people who lost loved ones 22 years ago today.
Yes.
And because your loved one is irreplaceable. When you love someone, even if you had 1,000 years with them, that's not enough.
Mm-hmm.
And I would like to add that because I have a good friend, Jeremy Glick, who lost his father who worked in the Twin Towers that day. And so for all those people, you've lost the irreplaceable. Nobody could say you'll get another father, another friend, another mother, because that person was unique. And so I just want to say that to anybody who's listening who lost someone that day. And for those of us who didn't, our humanity is connected to our ability to understand that loss. Because if we are living a life worth living, we have someone we love. And the very thought of losing that person makes us shudder.
Mm.
So connected now to what you just asked is that, most reality is perfectly fine without love, but ours isn't.
Mm.
You see, being a human being is not just about our ability to use language, our signs and symbols, our intelligence. Being a human being is also about understanding what it is to value and to be valued. And the fundamental core of our existence is this search for value, which is why we ask, why am I here? Because it's very difficult to understand, for a human being that is, to be here absurdly. And that, can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can.
Yeah, okay. And so with that, so what brings us into understanding ourselves is the question of our freedom, our ability freely to reach out to another and to receive love and to give love. And so a lot of our lives are about trying to figure out, are we valuable? Not in an egotistical or narcissistic sense, right? I mean, our species is pretty narcissistic, and that's not necessarily bad.
Mm-hmm.
But narcissistic disorder is when you're narcissistic to the point of there being no room for others. But when there's room for others, in fact, to the point where there are people who have so much of a love for others that they've They've basically denuded themselves of the very notion that there is an intrinsic bettering of themselves over others. That this is crucial. Now, of course, there are people who also go through the experience of being devalued, not valued. And they do struggle with this question of what is the point of existence when you're not valued at all. And there are people who think that they could just value themselves, but that is a lie, because you see, even if you try to value yourself, you have to ask yourself the critical question, which is, what have I done to make myself valuable? And that's a hard question to ask.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was thinking about, you were talking about this search for value. This is getting deep, as we say around here. It's getting good. I was thinking about that search for value as you were talking a moment ago, because as I've always processed it, value is not what you think of yourself. Value is what others think of you. An example I would offer is simply this. If I'm holding a Sharpie in my hand right now. For those who are watching, you see the Sharpie. The value of this Sharpie is not what I think of it. The value is, when I put it on the marketplace, how much somebody will give me for this Sharpie, whatever the item is. When you put the item out, you determine the value of the item based upon what others will give you, trade you for that item. That's how I have thought of value for the balance of my career. But when you're talking about human beings and the way we find value, does that analogy work or not work? Does it fit or not fit? Is it right or wrong?
Yeah, it doesn't work, because that's a very specific value. That's economic value.
Right.
Right? However, for instance, suppose that Sharpie you are holding was what your mother or your partner gave you, and that right before, say, that person passed away. And every time you hold that Sharpie, that connects you to that person.
Yes.
No amount of money can capture that value. That connects to what I was saying when I gave my condolences. You see? In fact, one of the horrible things of Euro-modern life is that colonialism and enslavement tried to reduce all life to economic value.
Yes.
And thus to turn people into slaves, into commodities. And part of our struggle, always as human beings, is to say we're more valuable than that. And the constellation of values are so many. There's value, there's beauty value, there's love value, there's memory value. There are all kinds of values that are connected. There's also, there's pleasure value, but there's also joy. And pleasure and joy are not identical. Because there are things, for instance, there's the value of respect. There's the value that of trying to make sure that the life is worth living value, decency, the complexity, there's the value of freedom. There's so many values. In fact, one of the things that's interesting about us is that part of our humanities, we cannot be reduced to one thing. We live in a world that is so rich, multidimensional. But what lies do is to try to make us two-dimensional, binary, one or so thing. Every human being is many things at once and more. And in our own lives, we think we know who we are. But we tend to learn who we are when we face situations that challenge our understandings of ourselves.
You're preaching now. I've said many times that you get to know who you really are in those dark moments. I wrote a book about Dr. King, about the last year of his life, and most Americans seem to know Dr. King in 1963 at the March on Washington. We just celebrated 60 years since that march on August 28th, and people know King at his apex, at his crescendo. But you really don't know Martin until you get to the last year of his life, when the cosmos has shifted against him. Everybody is now opposed to Martin. He's disinvited to speak at black churches. People don't want to be seen in photos with him. He is so toxic in the last year of his life because he's come out against the war in Vietnam and told America, you, America, are the greatest purveyor of violence in the world today. And everybody backed away from Dr. King. Nobody wanted to be around him in the last year of his life. He's persona non grata. He's crying himself to sleep. He's still pushing himself through trying to organize the Poor People's Campaign, but everybody and everything turns against him in the last year of his life, and that's when you see who Dr. King really is in the last year of his life, and he does not back down. He said, I'd rather be dead than be afraid, and he continues to move forward, even though everybody has sort of walked away from him. So it's in the dark moments of our lives, as Dr. Gordon said, that we learn who we really are. When we come forward, this notion he's mentioned a few times now, I want to interrogate, a life worth living. What does that mean? What is? How does one define a life that is worth living? It's a strange phrase, and yet we've heard it more than once. We'll interrogate it when we come forward on Tavis Smiley.
Unapologetically progressive. Unapologetically black. You're tapped into Tavis Smiley.
What is dedication?
My biggest fear in the middle of my addiction was that my kids wouldn't have a father. And I started thinking, you know what? This isn't my story. I definitely had to become a better man to be a better father. It's important to me that my kids are empowered and truly believe that if they can think it, they can do it.
That's dedication. Visit fatherhood.gov to hear more. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and the Ad Council.
Joey from Vermont, a farmer trying to get through the winter. Adriana from South Carolina, a single mother living paycheck to paycheck. Liam from Ohio, an injured father struggling to provide for his family. Hi, I'm Shanola Hampton, and I support the Feeding America network of food banks because they help provide over 6 billion meals to people in need each year. Learn more at feedingamerica.org.
JP Morgan Chase is building on the investments in California and around the country to help close the racial wealth gap and build a more equitable future. As part of JP Morgan Chase commitment, they are taking action to help improve financial wealth and access to banking in the Black community, helping more people open low-cost checking and savings accounts, hosting community seminars with supporting Black-led institutions by building awareness about financial investments, hiring community managers, and opening community center branches like Crenshaw, Inglewood, and downtown LA. Visit today, jpmorganchase.com/racial equity. Again, jpmorganchase.com/racial equity. Get the tools to help reach your financial goals. Visit today, jpmorganchase.com/racial equity. Again, jpmorganchase.com/racial equity.
Hello, I'm Jay Winnick. On 9/11, I lost my brave brother Glenn in the collapse of the World Trade Center. Glenn was a volunteer firefighter who died in the line of duty. Glenn's bravery inspired me to help start the nonprofit that's turned September 11th into a national day of service. For 9/11 this year, please join me by doing what Glenn would have done, taking time to help others. Please visit 911day.org to learn more.
Now. We tend not to think about now. We dream about tomorrow, relive yesterday. But right now in front of us is victory over cancer. Right now, cancer research funded by the V Foundation is leading to better treatments and saving lives. Victory over cancer is there for the taking by you, because today's cancer research is tomorrow's victory. Learn more at v.org.
Don't give up. Don't ever give up.
Helping to make you the most knowledgeable person in your circle of friends. This is Tavis Smiley.
Watching my time, Dr. Gordon is getting away from me. Let me move through a few other things right quick. One of our listeners says, Tavis, I think we are all here to experience love, whether we admit it or not. If that is true, that we're here to experience love, what say you about those who live lives and never find it?
The immediate thing I say to those people is ultimately for human beings, when we don't have that, we go through what could be called a living death. And those people suffer immensely.
And by that, Dr. Gordon, your phone cut out. When you say when we go through life and we don't have that, is that
which is love?
Love. Okay, got it. Okay, go ahead.
Which is love.
Right.
And I should add, thank you for what you said about Dr. King. You very concisely addressed his virtues of courage and love at the end of his life. The courage, of course, is that he loved so deeply that he made his own life secondary because of the extent to which he valued the lives of others.
Right.
And these others were not about a reduced nationalism of people in the U.S., but the globe.
Yeah.
For Dr. King, suffering anywhere was an obligation for everybody everywhere to be involved in making the lives of others better.
Yeah.
And one of the things that connects to what we're talking about was beautifully said, because, as you know, Dr. King also read the ideas of thinkers from all over the world, including India, whether they're Vivekananda or Tagore or Gandhi and others. But Tagore had a very insightful allegory. Tagore said the person who plants a tree knowing that he, she, or they will never be able to eat from the fruit of that tree knows the meaning of life. And, right? Because that's a person who loves so dearly that people whom that person will never meet, will never know. That person has made a decision that they should have the joy of the fruits of that tree. That true love is a dedication to the livability of life for everyone.
Lord. That'll preach, as we say. That's enough to marinate on the rest of the day. This whole hour has been rich, and we're not quite done yet. But that one line, that one sharing is enough to chew on the rest of the day. When we come forward in our remaining moments, I'm going to get Dr. Lewis Gordon's take on a debate that some of you know I have with Maya Angelou, who's like a godmother to me. Maya and I had this debate for 27 years until she died. We were debating this question: what is the greatest virtue, love or courage? We had that debate for 27 years. I took love, she took courage. I'll tell you more about it when we come forward on Tavis Smiley.
This is getting good. Yeah, man. Tavis Smiley continues when we come forward.
What's up, party people? It's your favorite MC's favorite rapper, MC Light here. And we're celebrating 50 years of hip-hop, authentically powered by Cadillac. And we're going to take it way back to where it started. It was only fitting that hip-hop began with teenagers at a back-to-school jam in the rec room of a South Bronx apartment complex by an 18-year-old brother. By the way, I'm also sure he had a Cadillac parked outside. He noticed the energy on the dance floor when he switched between two turntables, extending the beats, repeating the breaks, and never losing the rhythms. And that was the birth of hip-hop. And from that moment, it took off.
For more on how Cadillac is celebrating hip-hop's 50th, visit Cadillac.com/audacity.
What make you? Yeah.
The California Crusader newspaper would like to thank all of our subscribers for their support throughout the years, proudly serving the South Los Angeles and South Bay areas for more than 40 years. The California Crusader is a multicultural, black-owned, adjudicated newspaper that focuses on providing newsworthy information to the people in our community. We're constantly looking for ways to assist businesses in our community to connect with our subscribers. We provide low-cost, effective ways to promote your business with our reasonable and affordable advertising rates. You can participate by suggesting, sharing, and submitting your stories on the California Crusader newspaper Community Share Facebook group page, or visit our website at cal-cruise-news.com. That's calcruisenews.com. Then click on the Submit Now button located on the top right corner of the homepage, or text CCN to 42828. Again, text CCN to 42828. The California Crusader newspaper, working together to build a better community for our future. Subscribe today.
Mom's early Alzheimer's diagnosis was hard to take.
And when I left the oven on, we decided together that it was time to see a doctor and make a plan.
Early detection gave us more time to seek out information and support as a family.
If you or your family are noticing changes, it could be Alzheimer's. Talk about seeing a doctor together. For more information, visit alz.org/time to talk. A message from the Alzheimer's Association and the Ad Council.
Ew, gotta get rid of this old Backstreet Boys t-shirt.
Tell me why
Because it stinks, boys.
Tell me why.
I've washed it so many times, but the odor won't come out.
Tell me why.
No, you tell me why I can't get rid of this odor.
Have you tried new Downy Rinse and Refresh? It doesn't just cover up odors, it helps remove them.
Wow, it worked, guys.
Yeah.
Downy Rinse and Refresh removes more odor in one wash than the leading value detergent in 3 washes. Find it wherever you buy laundry products.
Made fresh daily in the Mert Park, Los Angeles, California. You're listening to Tavis Smiley.
Okay, Dr. Gordon, we're going to see how good you really are. I've got 4.5 minutes left in this conversation. I got 3 things we have to cover. 3 we got to cover in 4.5 minutes. Let's go with this fast round. You heard me say moments ago, and I see people opining on it already on our socials, and my phone's blowing up. Maya Angelou, my godmother, and I debated this for 27 years. One day when I was a kid, she asked me, Tavis, what is the greatest virtue? Love or courage? I thought it was a trick question, and indeed it was. But I went with love. I don't have time to unpack why. She went with courage. Her ultimate conclusion was that she chose courage over love because it takes courage to love. That was her rationale. What say you, Dr. Gordon?
I agree with her.
Wow. Golly. I thought you were my friend, man. You abandoned me.
No, let me explain. It gives me a chance to give a shout out to my colleague, Heather Baddeley. She writes on virtues and vices.
Right.
And to our mutual friend, Nancy Snow. And here's the thing. In a lot of my writings, I argue against what I call false dilemmas. Okay?
Right.
And false dilemmas is when we put people in the corner to think there is one versus the other, when in fact there may be both or many.
Right.
Now here's the thing. I would answer differently than the great Maya Angelou did, because she went through the question of the rationality, the kind of instrumentality of the argument, and I disagree with that.
Okay.
What I would say is something very different, right? Which is that truly loving always opens us up to vulnerability. In other words, to love is to take the risk to reach out and have the possibility of being harmed.
Nope, I get it.
And so the very fact that one is willing to face, in other words, courage is not about the absence of danger or invulnerability.
Right.
So all these superhero stuff, that's not about courage.
Yeah.
Courage is about facing our vulnerability for things greater than ourselves.
I got it.
So within that, love can make us. Love really can bring out courage. In other words, they're not against one another.
No.
They're actually part of a continuum.
My friend Thomas says it's the love that is given whether or not it's returned. It's the love without any self-benefit. That's my argument, but I hear your point about love versus courage. 2 things right quick. What's a life worth living? You said that a few times in today's conversation. I got about 90 seconds, but what in your mind is a life worth living?
Okay, well, connected to what I said earlier with Tagore, remember, and that's one of the speakers, the listeners, right?
Mm-hmm.
When it's not about self-gain,
sure.
What you're going to get for yourself, when you're building for this future for people you'll never meet. That's a more radical kind of love. And as you know, I write on radical love. Well, one of the things that I would say very quickly connected to that is that, that point I said about joy?
Sure.
Where that joy and pleasure are not the same.
Right.
That ultimately, what makes life worth living is going to be connected to meaning. It's having a meaningful life.
Yeah.
One could have all kinds of resources. One could have all kinds of things. One could even have a whole lot of social accolades, but find oneself on one's deathbed with all of that being meaningless.
Yeah.
So part of life is finding out what's meaningful for you to live a livable life.
Nope, that I received that. The third thing I'll hold for the next time Dr. Gordon's on this program. We didn't get to all 3 of them. I'll tell you what it is, and we'll pick up on this. Every conversation is funny. I'm looking at JD, my producer. Every conversation ends the same way with Lewis Gordon. We always tee up the next conversation, and believe it or not, we actually follow through on this. Today we started where we left off last time, and next time we'll start where we're leaving off right now, and that is how we can live more ethical and more courageous lives. How do we live lives that are more ethical and more courageous? Dr. Gordon will start on that the next time you come on the program. His book, his latest text, is called Black Existentialism and Decolonizing Knowledge, the writings of Lewis R. Gordon. Dr. Gordon, safe travels. We'll talk soon, my friend. All the best to you.
Thank you, Tavis, and I'm looking forward to a conversation. Very quickly, I have to give a shout-out to Cheyenne Day and Rosina Mart, who basically, Mart is from South Africa, Day is from India, who are the ones who encouraged me and organized a lot of the chapters, and we worked together on this book.
That's why I love black folk, always giving shout-outs. You're listening to Tavis Smiley.
KBLA 1580 Santa Monica.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us on this Monday. I'm Mike Moore. Now here's the latest from the Black Information Network. Family members